Okay, so we're going to look at this function or functions first, because before we try to and actually do the project, we need to know how to do functions. So first of all, I want to go over here to this exercise or assignment that I gave you and look at the programs that he does in there, because they're a little more simple than when we were doing the turtles one. And he gives you a basic use of the functions, and that's why I wanted you to do it first. And a lot of you still have, because it was due last week. Maybe I had done on by accident. All right, so down, if you go into the module, but you don't need to show it. I'm going to show this video up here, and because it's just a couple minutes, and then we're going to go through and create. So you'll get to, if you haven't done this assignment, it'll be late, but you can still do it. Okay, where'd that go? I lost it. There it is. So if you click on this one, functions, click here. And some people that I was grading this morning, for some reason, did the wrong. In
this course, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to get started programming in Python. Python is one of the most popular programming languages out there.
Okay, so we're supposed to go to this section, which is functions and return statements. So there's only 2 tutorials here that you do. And so let me go out to the YouTube of it.
Programming languages out there.
So we go down, if you, on all of them, I gave you a certain one to do, and he has the list of them. Where did it go? Oh, that wasn't what I wanted to do.
Programming languages out there, and it's by far one of the most sought after for jobs.
Okay, let me get to where the one on functions should be coming up. It's one, no, it was at 124, I think it said, didn't it? I think that's it.
We'll use tuples for data that's never going to change. So
where's that list
store data inside of a tuple when that.
Oh, we're not talking about tuples. I don't want to know about. Oh, it's right here. Here's this. Okay, so the one that you're supposed to be doing are these 2. So if you click on functions here.
In this tutorial, I want to talk to you guys about using functions in Python. Now, a function is basically just a collection of code which performs a specific task. So I can take a bunch of lines of code that are basically doing one thing. I can put them inside of a function, and then when I wanted to do that task or do that one thing that the function was doing, I can just call the function. And so functions really help you to organize your code a lot better. They allow you to kind of break up your code into different, little chunks that are doing different things, and they're really just awesome. So functions are like a very core concept when we're talking about programming in Python. So I'm going to show you guys how to create an awesome function today. Let's say for the purposes of this tutorial, we want to create a function that says hi to the user. So the one task that our function performs is basically just saying hi to whoever is writing the program. So over here, if I want to write a function, the first thing I have to use.
I remember, if you want to do it with them today, if you have not done the assignment, then you can and take a screenshot. Otherwise, you can do it on your own. But I want you to, functions are going to be a major thing in the test on Wednesday. So if you have any questions, you can raise your hand through it, and I'll stop him and I'll answer your question. Okay. So
is a keyword in Python. It's called def. So DEF. And basically, when Python sees this keyword, it's going to say, oh, okay, this person wants to use a function. So after we type out def, we need to give this function a name. So just like when we are creating variables, we give them descriptive names. We also want to do the same thing with functions. So if I'm creating a function, I can just give it a specific name which basically says like what it's doing. So we're going to create a function that says hi. So I'm just going to call this function say hi, just like that. And once we type out the name of the function, and so also I could type out say hi with no underscore, or I could type out say hi with an underscore. Both are considered like good practices in Python. A lot of times, if you just have a simple like 2-word function like this, you don't need to put an underscore, but we could put an underscore there if we wanted. After we type out the name of the function, I'm just going to type in open and close parentheses, and then I'm going to type a colon. And basically what this is doing is it's saying to Python, like, all right, all the code that comes after this line is going to be inside of our function. And in order to write code that's going to end up being inside the function, we actually have to indent it. So over here, you'll notice that when I clicked enter, my text editor automatically indented the text. So it's automatically like using this indent here. And that's kind of like one of the rules in Python is like the code that goes inside of this function needs to be indented. So if I was to write some code like out here, this is no longer going to be considered inside the function. So you can see as I type out code, and obviously this isn't real code, but as I type text over here that's indented, this little like marker over here is basically saying like, oh yeah, that's inside the function. But then when I write code over here that is like not at the same indentation level as this stuff, it's no longer considering it inside the function. So that's just a little thing. Any code inside this function needs to be indented. All right, so our function is just going to say hi to the user. So I'm just going to have it print out some text. It's going to say hello user. So this is a very simple function. Obviously, we just have one line of code, and inside of a function, you can have as many lines of code as you want, but for our purposes, we only need one line in order to perform our function. So now all we have to do is call this function. So if I want to execute the code inside of this function, I have to do something called call.
Now you notice that he didn't put return because it's Python, but you can put return so that you're consistent with other languages and it'll work. It's just that Python doesn't require a return if you're not actually sending anything or returning anything back to the main function where he's going to write the call. Any questions about that? So if you wanted to, and we're going to play with this little code here after he gets done, you would write return right underneath here, just so you understood that that's what's happening.
So if I was to just run my program as it is right now, I'm just going to run it. You'll see that nothing happens over here, right? Even though this function is printing out hello user, when I run the program, it's not doing it. And that's because the code inside of a function isn't going to get executed by default. The code inside of a function is only going to get executed when we specify that we want to execute it. And in order to do that, we're going to have to do something called calling the function. So in order to call the function, you basically just type out the function's name and those open and close parentheses. So I'm just going to type out say hi and open and close parentheses. And now when we run this program again, you'll see that it prints out hello user. So we're executing the code inside of the function. And I want to show you guys just one more thing here, just talking to you guys about how these functions actually work. So up here, I'm going to print top, and then down here, I'm going to print bottom. So I want to show you guys the flow of these functions inside the program. So when I run this program, you'll see we print out top, hello user, and then bottom. So essentially what's happening is when Python goes through and executes this program, it goes over here to this first line and says, okay, we want to print out the word top. And then it goes down here and it says, okay, we want to execute the say hi function. So Python actually jumps up and it goes over to this say hi function, and it's going to execute all of the code inside of this function. So it's going to go through, execute all of this code, and then once it's done executing all the code in the function, it's going to jump back down here and it's going to move on to the next line, which is bottom. So that's kind of like the flow of functions. Again, with functions, generally when we're naming these functions, you want them to be named in all lowercase And usually when we're naming stuff in Python, if there's 2 or more words, we're going to use an underspace or an underscore in between them. So I could write this out as say underscore hi. But in a lot of situations, though, if I have a function like this where the name is really short, it might just be easier to leave it without an underscore. But why don't we just put an underscore in there just to be super Python official? All right, so now we can actually make these functions a little bit more powerful. And what we can do is we can give them information. So a lot of times when we write a function, we're going to want to have additional information that gets passed in. And these are called parameters. So a parameter is a piece of information that we give to the function. So over here, I can actually specify that this function needs to receive some parameters. So I can basically say like, hey, if you're going to call this function, you need to give us some information. You need to give us some parameters. And all I have to do that is just type out the name of the parameter that I want to receive. So why don't we allow the code calling this function to tell it what name to say hi to. Up here, I can just say name. And basically what this means is, it means whenever I call this say hi function, we have to give it a name. So down here, if I was to call this, I have to include a name in here. So I can say like Mike. And what we can do now is we can actually access this parameter or this variable inside of our function. So I can come over here and instead of saying hello user, I could say hello name. And basically what this is going to do is it's just going to say hello to whatever name got passed in here. So I'm actually going to copy this and we will do this twice. So I'll say hello Mike, hello Steve. And now when I run this program, you'll see that instead of just saying hello user, it's saying hello to whichever name I passed into the function. So that's why this can be really useful, right? We can give the function information, and depending on the information we give it, it'll perform its task a little bit differently. I can also include more than one parameter. So you can, I mean, technically you can have like as many parameters as you want. So I can put another one in here, we can say age. And now I'm going to have to pass in an age along with these. So I'm just going to pass in age and pass in an age for down here. And I'm just going to pass in strings. So we can say hello name, you are age. So I'm passing in 2 pieces of information. And now when we run this program, it's going to call the function and it's going to use both of those pieces of information. So it's like, hello Mike, you are 35. Hello Steve, you are 70. So essentially, we're writing out this one line of code, which just prints out like hello to someone. And we're allowing this function to receive 2 parameters, so the name and the age. Depending on the name and the age, the function is going to print out hello a little bit differently. And that's kind of the beauty of using functions. So you can pass anything you want into a function. So for example, I could pass in a integer instead of a string for the age. So like I could pass in the number. The only difference is over here, we're going to have to convert this into a string. But it's going to work just the same. So you can pass in strings, numbers, booleans, arrays. You can really pass any type of data into a function and it's going to work. So you can see here we get the same result. So that's the basics of functions. And as you go through with Python, you're going to be using functions more and more. And generally, it's a good idea to break your code up into different functions. So whenever you have like a grouping of code that's designed to perform a specific task, that's usually a good candidate to be put inside of a function.
Now this one is important because you're going to do a return. You're going to do a return in Project 2, right? You had to do a return of values. So he does a more simplistic example of it before you get to Project 2. How many's done this? Okay, 2 or 3. Okay. 4, 5.
Return statement in Python functions. Now, a Python function is basically just a collection of Python code that performs a specific task. And when we want to perform that task in our Python programs, we can call a Python function. And a lot of times when we're calling a Python function, we just kind of call it and it does its thing and then we move on with the program. But sometimes when we call a function, we're actually going to want to get information back from that function. So when I call the function, I want it to basically execute the task. I want it to execute all the code. And then I want it to like give me some information back. So that could be like a particular value. It could be something like telling me how the task went. Basically, the function can just communicate back to us like, hey, here's some information. And that's what the return keyword can allow us to do. The return keyword can basically allow Python to return information from a function. So I'm going to show you guys how we can do this. I want to create a very simple function, and it's just going to cube a number. So when we cube a number, we take it to the power of 3. So if I was going to cube like 2, it'd be like 2 raised to the power of 3. Right? It's just pretty basic math. So we're going to make a function that will cube a number, and I'll show you guys how we can use that return statement. So first thing we want to do is make a function. I'm just going to say def cube. We'll call the function cube. And over here, we can specify any parameters that this function will take. So basically, any values that we want to give this function. So we're going to give it one function, which is just going to be a number. So I'm just going to call it num. And then over here, I'm going to type out a colon. And then down here, we can put any of the code that we want to be included in this function. So basically, this function is just going to cube this number. So we could just type out num times num times num, right? That's going to give us num cubed. So that's all well and good. And if I come down here, I can execute this function. So I can basically just call it, I'll say cube. And why don't we pass it a 3? So I'm going to go ahead and pass it a 3. And I'm going to save this. And now let's go ahead and run this code. So we'll run the code, and you'll see down here, nothing happened, right? So nothing got printed out in our program. In fact, when we called this cube function, it didn't really do anything. So let me try to print this out. So maybe if we print this function out, it'll give us back the information that we want. So type out print, and we'll print out the value of the function. I'm just going to click play. If you look down here, it says none. So when I printed out the value of this function, it told me none. But really, this function is supposed to be cubing the number. And here's how we can use the return statement in Python. I can come over here and I can just say return. And now Python is going to return whatever value we put over here to the right. So when I call this cube function and I give it a 3, Python is going to go off, it's going to execute this function. When it sees this return statement, it's going to say, okay, I want to give a value back to whatever called this function, and it's going to return this value. Now, when I print out cube 3, it should print out the answer because we get an answer back. So when I play this, you'll see down here, it says 27, so we got the correct answer. So I can do this with anything. Why don't we cube like 4 or something? So now I run this, and you can see we're constantly getting the correct answer back. So that's the basics of using this return statement. It allows us to return a value back to the caller. In other words, back to whatever is calling the function.
Okay, so now what we're going to do before you work on, we're in about 15 minutes, we're going to work on what he did and do some changes. So open up either PyCharm or idle, whichever you want. I'm going to use idle just because it is larger for you guys to see, but you can do whichever because it works the same. Get idle open. For some reason it's not showing up down there. So we're going to do some simple function before we get into our project because I want to see if for sure that you understand it. So let's do the one that he did on cube, and let's just type that in. If you've already got it typed in, then just use it to start with. So he said cube and num like this, and then it was return num times num, right? And then down here, it was just a call, but he had to say print the call to cube with whatever number we want to put in there to start with. What's that?
equals cube parentheses 4, 4, comma,
Yeah, you can put any number inside there and it'll work. So I'm gonna do file, save as, and I'm gonna call it cube 1, and let me put it in the right place, wherever that is. 19. Okay. So now when we run this one, it's just you have to put that number in every time, right? Whatever number, you have to go back and change it. So what could we do to this to make it really a better program where that it'll work? We could ask for the user to input the value instead of just putting the literal 4 there. Maybe we want this to work for any number that the user would enter. So let's go here. Let me go down. And this, remember, this is the main part of the program. So I'm going to go here and put a comment, because some people were having, I know when I was working with Lainey, somebody had her put the name of her function as main. Well, main in C++, Java, all that, there is a main function, and you do code it main with parentheses. But the thing about Python is you don't want to do that. So we're going to say our main program, now I have to, starts here. And so eventually we want it to print whatever the cube of the number is. But we're going to set up a variable here. So we're going to call it actually number equals, and let's make it an int, input, because you have to do this, I think, on the other one. So we say input, please enter a number to cube, and put a space. Oh, we're gonna put 2, right? Okay, so what do I need to change in my call to my function? Correct. So now I'm going to change the 4 to number because I've asked the user for it. If I left 4 in there, okay, let's do this. Let's show what happens. If I leave 4 in there and I run it this way, it's still going to it's going to say, give me a cube, but say I put 8 in there. Is that correct? No, because it's going to, every time I run it, regardless of the number that I put, it's going to always use the 4, right? So I want to do what Jamie said and put number in there. And now if I put, okay, let's try 3 because that's easy to do in our head, right? So 27. So it is taking now the one that I put in as the variable that's being used and passed up here, and then it's here. Now I can also make an intermediate step here, like if I wanted to actually return instead of this way, oops, and say I want to say result equals, then I'm going to have to say return result. And so now when it returns result, it should still get the same thing, but I have that intermediate field there, so I can say run. Let's see what happens. And if I say 3 again, there we go. So now the purpose for doing it this way is, you remember in Project2, you have to, instead of just saying print, you need to use that result in another calculation, right? So instead of saying print here, and calling it, calling it this way, if I take that out and I just run it, what's going to happen? If I run it without print there, where's my result going to go? It's not going to show anywhere. What do I need to do to fix that? Do you know, Joseph? Well, instead of print, what I want to do, let's say I want to come down here and I want to say problem equals result. Let's see. Or maybe I want to say print down here, and I'll say print result. Now, this may or may not work because it's Python, I'm not sure. So if I go here and I say run, it shouldn't work because I didn't pass it back, but Python is kind of, no. See, what happened is result was part of the function, but I never did pass it back into the main program. So when I say print result, it says, what's result? I don't know what result is. Question. But I have a question about that error. What if you get that error when you're working with Project2? Well, if you look up there, how can I put result down here so that it will work in that separate print statement? I could do like Joseph said, I could say print here and print result outside of there. But if I do this, let's see, I would say, I'm just going to call it SLT, oops, or I can't call it the same name, is equal to cube number. So now I got to change this. Okay, so now when I run it, please enter a number to cube, and there it is. So this is the part that you will need in Project2, is you have to set it equal to a variable here that's different from what's used up here, because that's the part that I was telling you, that whatever variable that you use in your function, it's called a local variable. And that means that it's local to a particular function. So inside main, whatever number is here, when I pass it, it's not known up here. If I tried to say this, I tried to say print number up here, it's gonna say, what is that? It'll say that same thing. Please enter a number to cube 3. Oh no, it gave it to me. That's the part that Python is different. Other languages would have said, what is number, because you didn't pass this one as num. I'm going to take that out because that makes it more confusing. The important thing is that you always want to make sure that your variable is passed back to main. Whatever you calculate inside your function, if you don't pass it back in or return it back to main, then it won't know what it is. Okay, we could do a lot more little things. Just like
there's something on my computer specifically
about this.
Yes.
Okay, let's. Oh, it's not showing your result. It's what it is. That's your Python. What's wrong with Python? Special variables. PyCharm person. Go into idle and run it. You may have to start using idle because on your home computer you have idle too. So just go here and try to copy and paste that same thing and run it in idle.
Okay.
That's what I would do because PyCharm, I don't know how to fix it. But I would, and also another thing you can do is go back to that video that we were just watching where he first when he first installs PyCharm,
Right.
and reinstall yours and see what happened.
Okay.
But with it not working on there, I don't know what's happening. That's really odd. Okay, so we're going to do project 2 now. And so if you do it with us in class and you get it correct, then you can install it again. Okay. Do you want to save? Sure, that's fine. Then you can, as long as you have 2 uploads in there, then I'll be able to give you full credit. All right, so I'm going to go over to the actual problem, and we're going to read it and start it together, and so that you'll see how to. Oh, why did I do that? So that you'll see how to start it. So if we go to, let me find it here so I don't have to download it. Projects, and it's project 2. Oh my goodness, that should be the one I used. I believe it is. Okay, so we copied project 1, and we can start out with project 1. So I'm going to go into idle. Which is easy. You want to do the pseudocode first? Anybody want to do the pseudocode? Okay, let's do the pseudocode first. So we're going to go over here into Lucidchart. I already had it open somewhere, I think. Oops. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so I'm going to take this off for now. And if we need to do the flow chart, we will too. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to pull a text box out here for the pseudocode, and I'll make it big here in a second. Left, and let's make it like, can you see that, Catherine? Can you see the text here? Or you can move up if you need to. Okay, so this is the pseudocode. So we're going to for sure have a start and a stop, and so we'll put everything in between. So the first thing we need to do is to copy whatever project 1 was, because that's a good place to start, and that'll be our main. Oops. I'm going to put a comment to here is what I was trying to do. Main program. I still didn't spell it right. Okay, type it. All right, so in the main program, if we did project 1, I can get that called up here. Where did it? Oh, they're calling about my car. Project 1, where's it at? It's in Word right here, I believe. Okay, so what my project 1, it had constants established for desk lamps, cost. Maybe I should do this whole thing. Okay, I'm going to just put this inside of Lucidchart so I don't have to go back and forth. So I'm not going to make it big text because I'm just going to copy that. Oops, over too far. Okay, so project 1 says that I have 2 constants, and so I'm going to go right in here and say lamps Oh, these are constants, so they're supposed to be caps, right? So I'll say lamps equals 65 and tables equals 155. Okay, then my statement was to ask for input. So I would say input, number, num tables and num lamps, or num lamps first, I guess. Num lamps and num tables. Now remember, you can call these variables whatever you want, and that should not be capital. And then I have my calculation. So what's my calculation? Should be total. I'll just call it invoice total was equal to, and in the first one, it was simply number of lamps times the constant plus, I don't know why that's blinking like that, plus, it's going down crazy, number of tables. What's the rest of it? You guys know, right? What's the rest of it? Times tables, okay. And I probably should put this in parentheses just to be consistent. Oops. Number of tables times, quit doing that, tables. Okay, and so then I would just simply have printed that, right? But I don't need to print that right now because I'm going to do some more. I got to find out now about the wood type, right? So there's a couple of different ways I can make a call to my wood type function, and I can pass back the final total and print it, or I can do all the print inside the function. What does my instructions say? Create a function to do the following. In addition to the input requested above, for inventory, you need to request the type of wood that the coffee tables are including, and include the following options stated in your request. Use if else. So mahogany, add $75 per table, oak, add $100 per table, pine, no charges added. So you can use constants, and you can put it together, but I'm going to go up here and start my function like the guy in the thing always did. So the program's to build a function, I'm going to say DEF, and I'm going to call it wood underscore type. Okay, what wood underscore type. And since I don't know yet what parameter, well, if I'm going to go ahead and do all the calculations, let me move this problem down. Okay, so if I'm going to do the calculation inside the main program, then I would have to return the one thing. And if I was going to ask the wood type down here with the other input, then I would have to pass it back in here, the parameter, right? Because I need to know what wood type the user input, right? So who did it that way? Did anybody ask the wood type inside the main program? Okay, Jamie, Zach. Okay, anybody else? Okay, so if we're going to ask the wood type inside, then we could actually put it down here and say we're going to ask the wood T. I'll just call it wood T for short. Okay, we're going to ask the wood type. So that means that we need to make a call to the name of this function, which is wood underscore type. And we have to pass into it wood t. And so up here, we'll just call it wood. So it's going to pass. It's going to need that in order to do the if statements, right? So down here inside my function, what do I need to ask? First, I can say if wood is what? It's equal to mahogany. If I know which one it's going to be the most often, equal to mahogany. So when I actually ask for the input, actually in pseudocode, I don't actually have to put those quotes in there, but it just might make it easier whenever you do your Python to remember. Why do I need quotes around mahogany? It's a string, right? It's a literal, right? A string. So if I don't, it will think it's a variable name and it will try to compare what's inside mahogany. Okay, so if wood is mahogany, what do I want to do? You could actually have a variable that you're passing back into main, or you could calculate the final total right there in the task. What is happening to my function into the final total? Yeah, so you can create the final total, but if you do that, then you've got to have this statement that's down here, up in here, right? Because you've got to do this part. You've got to calculate the lamps. So you could just calculate the tables, or you could just find out which one of these it is and pass that back. Okay, so you added that charge down here. Okay, did you do it? Who's else done it? Who else did it? Yeah, you had to do a function. Okay, so anybody else put? Okay, well, let's do this one. Okay, so if wood is the same as mahogany, let's say the charge is equal to 75. Right? And then we can do just an else that says, or you could use an elif, else charge, else charge is equal to 100, right? Now, we don't even have to do anything if it's pine, right? So the only time we want to do something if it's mahogany or, oh, I forgot my if, didn't I? Else if wood is the same as oak, then charge is equal to 100. So now I want to return charge, but what's going to happen here, because the way I wrote my, okay, so when I wrote my call down here, I didn't put a variable over here, so charge isn't going to go anywhere, right? So I'm just going to say CHG equals. So now when it returns, it's going to make a call and it's going to pass the input, whatever wood type is, into this variable wood, right? Then it's going to do this test and say if wood's mahogany, and actually I may want to put another else just to say error or something if it doesn't, or if it's pine, but we don't have to. So here we'll say if it's mahogany, charge is equal to 75. So we probably want to make charge up here, initialize it to 0 so that if it's pine or something, we want it to have something in it, right? Because what if we put pine and it says, I don't know what charge is because it never fell in either one of those, right? So we have to initialize it up here somewhere. So then return charge. Now this is not the only way to do it. So if you're thinking differently, we're going to look at that too if we can get to it. Okay, so then charge is equal to wood type. Put the wood T in there. Now we're going to have to, the invoice total is going to be equal to number of lamps times lamps plus number of lamps times tables plus charge, or does it say for each table?
Well, it asks for you to output every single thing that you input. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to input the total for the number of lamps and the total for the number of tables.
Well, it says, but it says to output the input. So this right here, you would never have to, you have to do this, but you don't have to actually do the intermediate total. But if you did, that's fine.
Well, on the example code, it shows that the amount for the total of tables and lamps are both output.
Okay, just a second. Let me look what you're saying. Okay, so what she's saying is down here, it has total for tables, total for lamps, the wood type, and the grand total of the purchase. Okay, so if we do that, what Jamie's saying is then you need to have a sub, you could call this one sub lamps. And so it would be this one, and then we drop this one down to say sub tables equals, and it'd be number of tables times tables plus charge, which is called CHG in here, right? We don't need the, we can put the parentheses here. But you probably don't need them. I do not know why that's flashing. That is the weirdest thing. It probably has to do with my recording of it. I'll tab this over. So now we need to do what she was saying with grand total, or I can just call it invoice total because that's what it is. Invoice total would be equal to what? Yeah, I hope somebody else is understanding this, because if you guys aren't understanding it, you won't pass the test too, I promise. So you need to not just be copying it, you need to make sure that you understand it. That's the purpose of what we're doing. So then we need to print out, like what she said, print. Did it have a do number of lamps and number of totals? I think it did. Number of tables, I mean. Num lamps, num tables, sub lamps, sub tables, and invoice table. Oh, charge. We probably want to, well, we don't have to do charge. Did it print out charge? No.
No, I just asked for the
Oh, wood type. And wood T, and then the invoice total. So it's going to print all those out. Let me get this pulled over a little bit. So it, well, did you have Christian, Simon?
Yeah, why would you add charge? So if you have more tables, like per table, if you add it at the end, it's only going to add that price per one table.
yeah.
Okay, so I did, so very good. Let's fix that. That's what I wanted to see if anybody could see that. Okay, so, well, my print, I was trying to get, okay, so you see what Samuel's saying? You pass this charge back, but if you say here, num tables times tables plus charge, it's just going to do it for that one, it's going to add it to the total charge for tables.
So I was gonna say, would you have num tables times in parentheses tables plus charge?
Actually, you, go ahead. Yeah, actually, you would say tables, you would say tables is the constant. So you would say tables plus charge times name below. Yeah, that's what you were saying. Okay. So what he's saying is you got to add to the charge first. You've got to add tables plus charge. What, John? That should work.
That would be the tables is
Like say tables is 155 plus 100.
Okay, never mind.
Okay, so that's right. So now, anybody have a question why we did that way? Because if you added it just on the end, it's only going to add it one time, and say you had 5 tables, then it should be added 5 times. Okay. All right. So there's the pseudocode for it. Let's see if we can quickly do the, we're going to see if we can quickly do the Python for it. Okay, so I'm going to open up idle again. I thought I left it open, but I did not. Okay, so this is all pseudocode. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to say, I'm going to make it a multiple statement comment. Now, okay, so I'm going to take this part though, so I don't have to retype everything. Put it down here. This is my function, but I've got to move all this stuff over, right? So I don't know which is faster. You have to decide. Let's see. Let me see if that's right. Make sure I get my tab in the right spot. Okay, so here's this one, has to come over there. And this has to come over there. Else has to come over even with that. So if you're a fast typer, it might be easier for you to retype it. It's up to you. Okay, now, and I'm forgetting some punctuation here. See, and return, oops. So I have to put after my if, right? I have to put a colon. After my else, I believe there has to be a colon after this if. All right, so now I'm going to take the main program, which is where my call is. I may not get all my print statements fixed, but I'm going to try to. So now let's go down here and make some more. So this is my main. So now I got to take all of these over. Oops. And it also took my L off. Now, this is where it takes a second, is to get all this input in here, right? So I have to say numlamps is equal to, and I want to say integer input, please enter of lamps. space. And I'll put a comment up here so that'll stay there. Okay, so now I want to do that again. So I'll just, let me go down here. And so the next one is going to say number of tables, right? Tables. Oops, Command V equals. Okay, and then I want to put it one more time for wood type. So it's a wood T equals. Now wood type is not an integer, right? Wood type is actually, please enter, okay, this one should say change to tables. This should say, please enter the wood type in lowercase because they can't do that. Mahogany, and you can tell it how much. Mahogany equals $75. Oak equals $100, and pine no charge, right? Space. Okay, so there's the last thing we have to enter. Then we say our call here, charge equals wood type. And then we have sub lamps equals number of lamps times lamps, sub tables equals number of lamps times tables times charge. So none of that changed. Then our invoice total, and then our print statement has to change, right? I'm not going to make it exactly like that one because it'd take a lot of typing. But here I would say, I'm going to put just the total invoice right now. So print total invoice is, and I can put comma plus, what's that variable is called INV total. Oops, I forgot this part. Got to put a quote here. And then I got to put a, let's see, is that going to work? Let me see here. Let me put the comment. Oh, my output is always messed up. Let me do this. This needs to go here, right? No, that was right. Oh, well, I'll find out if it gives me an error or not. Okay, so I'm not going to print all the input fields like it showed, but you need to, if you make it correct, you need to go in and fix those invoice totals. Okay, let me see if I've done anything right. Let's go here. If it runs, it must be saved. Okay, it is Project2. And it goes into and 30 class save. Okay, let's see what we got. Invalid syntax. What did I do here? Oh, I left both places. I left the second parent off here and here. EOA while scanning literal. Where's that at? End of, it didn't show it. Let's see. End of line when scanning, oops, sorry. When scanning for literal. Oh, right here, did it not? Did I not? Would T input Oh, I put an extra one of these. That's what it is. Maybe that's it, I hope. Let me make this bigger so you can see it all. There we go. Oops, maybe. Did all of it? Okay, let's go here. Okay, number of lamps. I think I told you to do 2 and then 3, or was it 3 and then, okay. 2, 3. Please enter the wood type. Mahogany. Okay, so okay, wood type is not defined. Okay, so where is that? Where is it? Isn't that what it's called? Oh, it's a capital T, isn't it? Did I make capital T down here?
You said wood tea.
Yeah, I said right here is the actual name of the function, though, is where I messed up. See up here, it's lowercase, so I didn't find it. Would tease the variable name. Okay, number lamps, 2, number tables, 3. Please enter wood type, MAHOGANY. Still giving me some type error. Must be string, not integer. So where's that at? Print total, and oh, okay. So down here, when I said print invoice total, this has to be a string. So now it goes run, run. Okay. Now where is it? Yeah, but it's saying, is there one more needed? 1, 2. Oh, that's it. I need one more. So it's just not printing my total. Do I need one more parentheses? There we go. Run. Let's see if that does it. Oh. Okay. 2, 3. MAHOGANY. Enter. There it is. 820. So you can refine the print. You need to look up, because I think I give you extra points for formatting it with the $sign and all that. We just don't have time to do that right at the moment. So there is our actual, but the logic works here, and that's what you get the most credit for, is the logic working. So here it is. Oops. Do what? Okay. Well, the top is just the pseudocode. The program doesn't actually start till right here. So that's the pseudocode up at the top. So let me see, this is called P2. Okay, let me put it on there. But if I put it up there, some people won't type it in and make it work. That's why I don't want to do that. Because I want my online class to type it in. So I'm not going to, yeah, you can take a picture, that's fine. But I want you to type it in and make it work. And so if you have till midnight tonight, so be sure you work on the actual output too.
What's the
At the side. That's just all comments.
oh, okay.
Anything that's in red is just a comment, because I to make it look like the output in the actual problem, you've got to change these print statements, right? Okay. But this logic will work. I just didn't print out the subtables, sublamps. So that's saying to print all of those out.
Okay.
All right, in your output. Okay, I got to get out of here so that other class can get here.
So for the time being, you want me to keep running idle instead of